This book is simply what it is, biblical intimacy between the married couple. It is natural, spiritual, and informative. It equates the natural and spiritual bridal chambers. It explains the intimate marital relationship from God's point of view. It is recommended that this book be read by both potentially married couples, those who are already married, and singles. While there is no claim that these written words are of any new revelation, they are poignant and play a significant part in today's society. This book is straightforwardly understandable. Have long-lasting intimacy with your spouse. Read how to accomplish it. Today, most couples plan their wedding, not their marriage. There are serious questions that need to be honestly asked and honestly answered between the couple prior to marriage. There is a brief teaching on domestic abuse, including social statistics. Jesus never leaves us nor forsakes us. Some choose to leave him. When a husband or wife abuse one another, whether physically, financially, psychologically, sexually, or emotionally, they have left one another, and they have left Jesus. They still may live under the same roof, but they have departed. From God's perspective, this couple is divorced. It can be resolved. Some of the content in this book contains extracts and rephrases from Revival Count Me and the Book of Acts Revived, and are included for foundational purposes and enhancements.
That the highest percentages of abuse are among the clergy. The church community is slowly realizing this, and it is still behind the secular world, which is very sad, in terms of healing for the abused. This is because it is a big issue within the church itself. The church is a great hiding place for abusers and pseudo-Christians. They have the scriptures to defend themselves. God hates divorce. Also, it is one of the biggest fears pastors and congregants face. They will go to hell for disobeying the Bible by giving someone permission to leave an abusive relationship. In addition, since many are Catholics, Episcopalians, Orthodox Jews, Russian Orthodox, and the like, they have yet to be freed from certain false doctrines. Getting born again does not automatically wash one's minds of false beliefs. Some fallacies, yes, but other releases occur over time as the washing of the Word cleanses the mind. Satan's main goal in keeping someone in intimate bondage is hoping the victim will ultimately lose their faith in God by constantly being beaten down and ultimately leaving Jesus. Walking away from an assumed biblical teaching that calls for such shackling is a freedom the victim feels they have no other choice to make. Clergy make them feel they are choosing between hell on earth or hell for eternity. Pastors indirectly tell them that a little hell on earth for the gospel's sake is worth avoiding hell after death. Of course, marriage counseling is offered, which is not what is needed. This will make the situation worse. Unless pastors and leaders have decades of training and abuse counseling and or have experienced abuse for themselves in some fashion, they will be part of the problem. They will easily be deceived. Life coaches and Christian coaches who do not have adequate credentials should never take on this responsibility. The abuser needs abuse counseling from a highly trained professional, and they do not have to be Christian. Usually the victim walks away from that church and the church's counseling in exchange for remaining with Jesus, the lover of their soul. Jesus is the one who is showing them the way out of abuse despite what the leaders or anyone think. Marriage counseling is effectual for basic healthy marriages. It is for marriages that have just gotten off track. All counseling must be void of manipulators and deceivers. Males must only counsel males, and females should strictly counsel females. Delane Smith Clark explains abuse in the church, as well as in the world system, in her dissertation submitted to the faculty of the School of Divinity in partial fulfillment of the degree of Doctor of Ministry. It is a masterpiece and worth your time and attention. What she shares is what many non-collegiate women already know. These complications are still here today because of deep-seated false indoctrination that even born-again people are holding on to.
Leviticus Chapter 18 clearly explains all sexual sins and its immoralities. It does not mention masturbation. Typically, when one hears the word masturbation, they equate it to the following: sexual toys, sexual toy retail stores, pornographic pictures and movies, orgies, open marriages, and sexually illicit fantasies. This is very sad and an untruth. Besides, how would they know about such things if they have kept themselves pure from these sins? Were they once in bondage to these things? Colossians 3:5, put to death, therefore, whatever belongs to your earthly nature, sexual immorality, impurity, lust, evil desires, and greed, which is idolatry. God tells us in the Bible that sexual immorality is sexual activity between two people outside of marriage. This includes adultery, infidelity, and fornication, premarital or extramarital sex, and being a sexual pervert. All of these actions are off limits for those who follow Jesus. Also, read 1 Corinthians 5:6, Acts 15:29, and Hebrews 13:4. In James 1:14 through 15, but each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own evil desire and enticed. Then, after desire is conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is full grown, gives birth to death. Masturbation, I contest, is not an evil desire. Allow me to quote vividchristianity.com. Sometimes people claim that masturbation is a sin because there's a possibility of becoming addicted to it. However, if we're willing to be objective, then it's easy to see the flaw in this argument. If you search online, then you'll find numerous examples of married people who are in therapy for sex addiction. Marital sex is not a sin in the Bible. If people become addicted to sex, then it's the addiction that's wrong, not the sex. And exactly the same way, if people become addicted to masturbation, that's the addiction that's wrong, not the masturbation. The Bible never says that masturbation is a sin, but what does it mean to be addicted to sex or masturbation? In psychology and medical articles online, there are differences of opinion about whether or not sexual addiction is a real disorder and how to define or diagnose it. Most definitions use terms as compulsive, obsessive, or excessive. But how do we know if our desire for sexual satisfaction is compulsive, obsessive, or excessive? Many of these definitions also include the issue of sexual thoughts, desires, urges, or behaviors impacting one's life in a negative way, and this seems to be the key factor. If the frequency of our sex or masturbation or the way that we do them isn't causing any negative impact or harm to us or to anyone else, then is there really a reason to consider it as an addiction or a problem? Now then, why is it that preachers and their wives, the ones who teach against masturbation, they're married? The desire for sex is natural. Clean, wholesome sexual imaginings are normal. It is also a sign that one's hormone levels are high, which is healthy. Critical thinking is a necessity when listening to believers' testimonies about never having had masturbated and being virgins prior to marriage. I often hear this from proud people who got married when they were 16 years old. Yet, they are going to condemn a 40-year-old, a 30-year-old, or a 60-year-old for masturbating because they have no spouse? As a chaplain and counselor for females, I once learned of a very sad truth from one of my clients. Often during the evening, she would be desiring her husband who was lying next to her in bed, but he was only engaged with himself. Obviously, he continued a habit from years ago and disregarded that he was now married and should be engaging with his wife while giving up his long-established practice. In the meantime, to avoid sexual sins and sexual temptations, to keep oneself healthy and free from marrying the wrong person or ending up in sexual fornication, masturbation is normal. Denying the flesh and putting to death the misdeeds of the flesh, according to the Bible, does not mean denying one's humanness. It is talking about the fallen, sinful nature of man. The basic needs of humans: warmth, shelter, food, clothes, and sex have not been done away with.
I would like to continue some of this teaching, for not all of it is in the book, Marriage and Intimate Idealism. Again, I need to explain that critical thinking and valid scripture backing up false teachings and how preachers are condemning parishioners and openly talking about such a private matter anyways as masturbation. I mean, that's private. Why even talk about it? Why don't we talk about the good stuff that's in the Bible? Okay, so Leviticus Chapter 18 does list all the sexual sins, and they are explained, yet do not have our modern terminology. This is because mankind changes, we change names over time, and the sexual sins apply to all eras. So Leviticus chapter 18 can apply to all eras, all right? Thousands of years. Leviticus chapter 18 does not mention masturbation. And the word masturbation does not have to be in the Bible to be recognized. If it were listed in Leviticus chapter 18, it may have said something like this: do not have sexual relations with yourself, or do not have sexual relations by yourself. Masturbation is a sin if the married couple deny one another sex because they are too into themselves, or if one is locked up in their room all day due to their own lust, then they're in bondage. Furthermore, people equate masturbation, like I had said before, with pornographic movies and orgies and dirty thoughts. Why? Why does that have to be the case? That makes it a sinful act. All right? Lustful thoughts don't have to be entertained during masturbation. Also, people have orgasms in their sleep due to hormones, even a young child. If a young child's half asleep and they're having an orgasm and they touch their private areas, oh my God, they sinned? They're masturbators? It's human nature. It is a sign of health. It is not lust. Again, I want to emphasize that the people who teach against this, and I'm not implying it should be promoted. I'm not promoting. Here's the thing. I'm not promoting. Hear me again. Because I've gotten some riffraff about this, but I don't care. I'm standing. I'm going to stand on the case that I am making because I need to help people who have been condemned and judged by preachers. I am not promoting masturbation. All right? Now, usually married couples, and they're married church leaders, or like I said before, couples who got married very young. All right? And a lot of them get married young because it's their culture. I can't wait to have sex, so I want to get married now. And maybe they just met someone. You know, they just marry for sex. There's other reasons to get married. Now, yes, in some countries, they do marry very young. Okay, but a single 30-year-old, 40, 50, 60, or 70-year-old can't masturbate? If it's preventing these people from sexual sins, fornication, premarital sex, marrying the wrong person, I'm sorry, but I think God has enough grace, to be okay with this. Also, preachers, they were even so afraid to even preach about the Song of Solomon. Now, the Song of Solomon is about the wedding night. It's very sexual. In the Song of Solomon, chapter 7, verses 1 through 4, now listen, the curves of your thighs are like a necklace. Why did the husband say this to his wife? Her thighs are around his neck. He is enjoying oral sex with his wife. In addition, medically speaking, masturbation may prevent atrophy and urine leakage in middle-aged or older people. It keeps the internal muscles and pelvic floor strong. All right? It can even prevent poop from just falling out. It sustains hormones. It sustains youth. Also, there is a teaching that Onan, okay? Now, Onan sinned by masturbating. No, he didn't
He did not. He sinned. Okay, now this is what the masturbation was not his sin. He sinned because in the Old Testament, Onan is the individual who spilled his semen onto the ground to avoid having children with his brother's widow, Tamar. This act is described in Genesis 38, verses 9 through 10. The narrative explains that Onan's intention was to prevent his brother's lineage from continuing through him. This action was deemed wicked by the Lord. So in biblical times, they had to make babies and to continue the family bloodline. Read my book, Marriage and Intimate Idealism.